Alright, I'm ready.
Hello, YouTube and fellow citizens. It is I, the Sovereign Citizen, here again, and today I have two individuals that I'm going to be interviewing, and they were there on the ground during the Boston Free Speech rally that turned into a riot that brought riot police out. If you two gentlemen can introduce yourself.
My name is John Koval.
And I'm G. Martinez. Pleasure to be here.
Hello, fellows. I've shared one of your videos already, John, and I'll probably be sharing more later. I put his Instagram link in the description of the previous video, and there will be more videos up. So just to start off right off the bat, what was it like on the ground? Like, give me like chronological order, like what happened from your perspective.
For me, I was there from like 10:30 in the morning all the way to about 5 p.m. In the very beginning, it was peaceful. The setup was so that at the gazebo at the Boston Commons, they had the white supremacist group. Between that gazebo and about 100, 200 feet out, it was barricaded off with police on their bicycles, making sure like no one was going to get out of hand or crazy. For the most part, it was pretty much seemed like that small group against thousands of other people. If you probably from their perspective, all you could see is just people from. And for like the crowds themselves, everyone holding posters, people just getting along. There was music playing. There were a couple of instances where there was two instances that I can recall where there were Trump supporters, flags like around them saying support Trump or like the American flag, with Bud Lights in their hand, walking through the crowd, drinking in public. And then there would be a little bit of conflict between the counter-protesters and the white supremacist supporters. There was about two instances where, well, those two instances, the counter-protesters would just be telling them to go home, go home. There would be arguments, and there was somewhat of conflict, but not too much where police really got too involved. And that was at least at the very beginning. But as time moved on, for about like the next 2 hours, it was more so of a standstill, and eventually the white supremacists left the gazebo. Police, and again, there would be kind of protesters yelling, go home, patriots,
no fascism in the USA,
KKK, no fascism.
So the usual chants that a lot of the left uses.
That have been carrying on since the elections themselves, when the protests started in New York. Trump. They were in between Trump and Hillary. Is the same chance that started from there that carried on up until this day. As well as F Trump and everything.
Exactly. It was heavy like anti-Trump as well as like anti KKK during the rally.
Yeah.
And the one time that I liked was when everybody actually decided, like, they got together like more towards the stairs near the if you were to be near the fountain at Park Street entrance, at one of the entrances to the train station, if you go towards the left a little bit, there's like one of the sets of stairs right next to the fountains. And after like the initial like crowd gathering and stuff like that, people started getting more towards there. If you're watching one of my videos, I actually noticed that people were starting to get over there, and I initially thought it was a dispersal since it seemed kind of chaotic, but it just turns out that everybody just sort of wanted to end up going there after all.
Yeah,
that one took a slightly different approach that I appreciate everybody, because they literally they were just talking about what does democracy look like, and at the end of the day, it's just the fact that people were actually able to express themselves. We were chanting stuff like that. It wasn't as heavy, F anybody sort of, it was just, everybody's lives matter at that point,
Yeah. There was a lot of heavy chanting.
Exactly. It's like they took it over like, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
It obviously was nothing like Charlottesville. It didn't get nearly the national.
No, nowhere near.
There was really no injuries, even when things got which what he explained that happened shortly after, like everyone was still sticking around, all the counter protests were still sticking around, still expressing their views. They would sell the chants, had the signs. We actually saw Vermin Supreme there as well. I don't know if you guys remember him. Yeah, he was around. He was shaking everyone's hand and stuff like that in support of the counter protests.
Yeah,
actually very pleasant.
Yeah, he has a picture of him. That's gonna be part of the thumbnail.
Yeah. And so around that time where we went to the stairs, there was still like the chants going on, but it was a little bit more organized. They had megaphones going on. They would have the Black Lives Matter movement there, the actual Black Lives Matter movement, which like the organizers were there as such,
Yeah, there
and they
were
were
two separate
expressing their
groups.
views, expressing stories, as well as doing more chants. At a couple of points, there were instances throughout the day, and one of them that I can recall where it got to a point where people were saying impeach Trump, and a Trump supporter came out and was just like, "What's wrong with Trump?" Arguments started to happen a little bit there. Things got almost out of hand until Black Lives Matter organizer came through. It was like, let's keep it peaceful, and also other
Exactly.
counter protesters, keep the peace, no violence, no
Yeah,
violence.
exactly. They left it at, the organizers defused the situation, and because like I actually have footage of it as well. Initially, people thought that even though he was just a Trump supporter, they thought that he was another one of like the like the KKK and fashion and stuff like that. So initially, the crowd was literally like rushing him, and that happened right before like the footage that you guys saw. The cop, striking me, but
that was
people started gravitating towards him, thinking, obviously that, oh, he's KKK, let's get him out of here. At one point, even I yelled, thinking, I kind of got stirred up with the crowd, like, we don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, but the organizers defused the situation extremely quickly. They're just like, listen, let him talk. They talked for a little bit. A bunch of different people spoke to him, but ultimately they let him talk, and then they peacefully escorted him out.
They shook hands. They actually would. The Black Lives Matter person that pretty much organized the conversation. They were conversing between the person that was supporting Trump as well as the people that were right up in his face arguing with him. But they sat there, actually had a civil conversation, and at the end, about like 20 minutes after, shook hands, smiled, and everything else. Everything was good. Everyone walked away. Nothing bad happened.
And that's what America needs to look like, in my opinion.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of these organizations really have been pushing. The bad
apples just end up ruining the bunch,
and a lot of them want to say that they're part of these organizations. I understand they support them, but at the same time, they have to look at themselves and not let their ignorance really ruin what everyone else is trying to do.
And they actually have to follow the group's every single idea. Because, like, for example, the group that ruined the riot, they were claiming Black Lives Matter, but unlike the actual Black Lives Matter organizations, they were actually badgering the cops. They were actually at certain points being very belligerent towards people. And that's what ultimately led to the conflict in the end that led to the riot. They tried to jump a KKK member, and then that got everybody riled up. And then,
people started saying no violence, no violence.
Yeah, exactly. Like I showed you the video of me. I personally got in between them and the riot police. I was getting ready for them, obviously. And it's just like, this is a peaceful protest. I was just yelling out to everybody, this is a peaceful protest. That's not what we're here about,
And that will be uploaded too prior to this interview. Now, I think it's important to say that the organizers of this event did not organize Charlottesville. It's two different groups.
No.
I know someone, I forget his name. I think his name's Shiva. He's running against Elizabeth Warren. He's a South Asian Indian, and he was there too. And he was at that gazebo too, and around him was Black Lives Do Matter, get GMOs out of our food and all that. So I feel like it was a little bit more diverse than Charlottesville.
A lot more.
As what happened earlier, me and my friend got a small interview with Time Magazine about that topic, about how Boston's more so of a melting pot, and how a lot of these different cultures, the diversity, you can see it in the protest. But all these people came together for the same reason, for the problems that we have in this country. And mind you, there are a lot of little details, a lot of little things to be bothering people, but we all brought it to the table in this protest, it looks like. But at the same time, it wasn't completely organized, because again, like you said, like there's someone saying like no GMOs in our food, and then another person saying no KKK. It's like the spectrum of are completely different, but at the same time, it all got out, Everything was said.
Yeah, people were actually given time throughout the day to actually individually voice themselves and whatnot, Like people would gather, obviously,
and the free speech rally was for. I don't think it was like Unite the Right had a purpose, and personally, I think it was hijacked by white supremacists to create a disruption and I've made videos on this, how I believe that one of the people running the events is being paid off by someone to create this idea of a race war and to disrupt unity and just dividing the country.
Like the free speech side, or
well, it was at the Unite the Right, and it was supposed to be because in Washington D.C. there was a schism inside the right wing. You had the alt-light, which these are people that are not like Richard Spencer or Augustus Invictus. It's like people like Gavin McInnes and other YouTube personalities like Milo Yiannopoulos. Like those two are the alt-light, but the previous two are the alt-right. The difference between the two groups is the alt-light believes that the West is the best because of our diversity. We have a lot of, we bring the best out of every culture. But the alt-right, they just want a ethnocentric world or America, and
they want to keep their culture alive in a sense.
Yeah.
Well,
they don't want to be real about us. They keep trying to say in a way.
To sum it down into like a generalization, the alt-right are Western chauvinists, and the alt-right are white supremacists almost, if not already.
At least that's how you can kind of relate it to, based on like how their ideas are really being seen.
Yeah, that's how they essentially like manifest their ideology.
Yeah. Did you? So there were reports by Boston police on Twitter that Antifa showed up and started throwing human urine and feces. Did you guys see that, or was that on the other side?
Feces? We can actually get to this now.
No urine or feces.
Yeah,
there was a lot of water bottles, definitely.
This was at the point where I think it's probably where everything really, like the riots started like breaking out and things got bad, where the 30-something odd arrests happened, or at least the 27 at the time when I saw the reports right after. But this was in front of the Godfrey Hotel in Boston. This was after people were chasing the white supremacist or the person that they were arguing against. Mind you, this was like right on Tremont Street, I think, right next to
they started like there was actually like a physical altercation between them and
people started getting physical. Mind you, these people were repping themselves from Roxbury and Dorchester. Like literally, like we're from Dorchester, we don't respect that. And that was the type of people that would just like kind of bring it out of hand.
They were the ones being belligerent towards the police the entire time.
So when they chased this person into the Godfrey Hotel, like the group themselves, the police lined up in front of the hotel to block off, make sure no one would get in and cause any more violence, which was respectable, of course. There was a big lineup of police on motorcycles and on bicycles. They had the motorcycle parked in the middle of the street. Mind you, it's a very small street because this is in downtown.
Yeah.
And so everyone's sitting outside. They pretty much just waiting for this person to come out. And again, a lot of these people are like, some of them were the Antifa, because I even remember seeing one of them
started to organize itself.
One of them threw liquid. Yeah. I don't know what it was. I honestly even heard someone saying someone's throwing acid, but no one received any injuries.
People
like that,
just started running. Yeah.
There was a protest. It was like an anti-Sharia protest in the YouTube personality Lauren Southern, who was with Rebel Media. She's conservative or libertarian, whatever you want to label her. She got doused in fox piss by Antifa.
Really?
So yeah, they like to throw.
Yeah, they get really creative with their
Yeah, really.
Yeah, those are the extremist ideals that we can't accept, because that's just making us look just as bad as the KKK, unfortunately. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to invoke violence. We're not trying to invoke hate. We're not trying to really do that.
We just want everybody to actually be able to understand each other. That way we can actually properly, at the very least, be able to give each other our space, if that's really what it comes down to. But at the end of the day, no one's going to make it anywhere unless we're actually fully able to understand and grow together and get further together.
As we digress, though, the altercation with the police and the rioters was that mess with the bike. Again, the same people from like Roxbury, Dorchester. They started messing with the police motorcycle right out front of the hotel. One of the police officers decided, it's about time to move it. It seemed.
Yeah, they were starting to threaten the bikes. Yeah. They were just like, we got your bikes now. What are you going to do now? You're not getting out of here. And then the officer tried to get on the bike, and, he started to like turn it on and stuff like that. But one of the main protesters that was leading like the chanting on their end actually got in front of the bike. And it's just like,
he was trying to get in the way and really just trying to provoke something with the cops. Exactly. And there was a lot of F the police type thing going
then,
on.
Like, people started throwing water on the cop, and then like they started like as soon as the first person threw water, a couple other people got brave,
and some of them even started throwing rocks.
Yeah, and then as soon as that happened, the cops that were in front of the Godfrey, they just started rushing the crowd and taking individuals.
They took out their batons. They would chase people down, and people were getting thrown about, and that's when the violence started to break out.
Yeah.
And for me, him, and our other friend Lauren, personally, like we were right in the front line there. Yeah. He was actually like in front of the police, like with his arms out, telling the crowd, just respect the authorities. Like they're here to do their job.
Don't let that. Yeah, I was trying to get that because at that point it was pretty obvious, the energy of the crowd. They were pretty riled up and they wanted that guy.
Yeah.
So I got in front of the crowd after. Sorry, you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say cops are human too, and they unfortunately they have to follow their boss's orders. Like we saw in Charlottesville, they were given the order to stand down, and they stood down, and it led to a death.
More violence.
But it's just like I said before. Once if you see the video of me breaking up the fight, that was immediately afterwards. We went in front of the Godfrey, and I was in front of the Godfrey. Well, don't give them a reason. We do not need tension to rise. Just because at first the cops were just, they were just standing there how they're supposed to. They're keeping the man safe. And then as more of like the other group that were saying, like F the police and stuff like that, they started coming. Then the police came with the bikes to set up a barricade. The more they started getting to be more belligerent, then they started whipping out the baton, stuff like that. The entire time I'm just like, we don't need this, guys. Tension does not need to rise. I had the crowd chanting a little bit, whose streets are streets, just to kind of get us, united. But then
they got taken in the wrong
direction. Exactly. They immediately stole the spotlight from me. And then just started chanting all this, F the police, mask off, effing mask off, all stuff like that,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, when the violence did break out, there was actually an instance where one of the cops, like to our side, was just like, if you're peaceful, stay in this corner. Yeah. Mind you, me, him, our friend, and another person, we were all kind of blocked in because the violence was right in the street. We couldn't really get around or anything like that. But we were actually being protected by another officer, and me and him were making sure that no one else would fall into our corner and start any violence.
Me and him, we used ourselves kind of like human barricades, aside from the police. But the police said it immediately. If you're peaceful, you stay in this corner.
Yeah, motivate out and just sneak through the crowd while everything was going up.
Yeah, everything kept getting riled up. People were coming from Boston Common. The people that were still left.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kept like some people
and they would
kept also coming in. Yeah, they kept adding in.
And they just didn't know what exactly was going on. From their perspective, they probably saw it's like, oh, just need to act.
Yeah.
Instead of being there and understanding what started the violence.
They just like the people are being attacked to act,
what kind of ignorance was involved, and just really understanding the ideas of how it started.
Yeah. So one of you, John or Gene, if we want to differentiate between the two Johns, you were there picking up trash. I don't know if you were too, John.
No, he actually was too.
Okay.
That started off with an organizer. He actually was. Were you confronted, or did they talk to you?
So what happened was I noticed her, and I was just curious. I kind of asked, like, why were you doing this? And she mentioned that she was an organizer, and she just straightforwardly told me, we're just trying to set the best example as possible. And then she noted that, if you look at the Nazi side, their side is trash. And we were actually going to get to that at the very end of the event, but obviously, the riot happened. But we just figured we're going to clean up after ourselves first, and then, we'll be the bigger person and clean up after them as well. We just, again, couldn't get to that due to safety reasons.
Yeah, we were able to get a trash bag from her.
Yeah.
And then me, him, our friend Lauren, and this other person, Caden, that we met along the way while we were collecting trash.
Yeah.
We went down the commons. We were walking down the sidewalks there in the middle, picking up trash and everything else. There was other people that would come along and support. Eventually, he ran to CVS, actually got another thing of trash bags, and we walked around like individually or as a group. Trash bags for others to help out and stuff like that, and to clean up, to really make sure, like, obviously everything got trash. There's a lot of people there, and we can't.
Like the trash cans, cans were full for the most part.
Yeah,
like,
they were all
stuff. Yeah, so it's just like to do so. It's just there was nowhere to really put the trash, so we figured we will properly dispose of the trash for them, just because we can't have the park trash afterwards. That's just something the media and obviously like the other groups that were directly against everything, they're just gonna use that. We actually have to do something as a community and do our proper part. We came here, we made use of the area. Yeah, exactly. We should be able to clean up after ourselves.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed with a lot of the Antifa like conflicts and riots, like starting with the inauguration in Washington D.C. to Berkeley, all the battles in Berkeley, I should say, is that they like to throw trash cans into the road and eventually set them on fire. I think it's that sometimes they like to claim that they're environmentalists, but I find it kind of ironic or hypocritical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That is ironic and very hypocritical.
Yeah.
And with the Dakota Access Pipeline protesters, the ones that set up the camp, they left a huge like pile of trash. You could see photos of it. They had to bring in like bulldozers and all that just to collect the trash and whatnot. The women's march, they left their signs in the middle of the street. There's footage of that. I feel like if you're going to protest, just make sure you clean after yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. That's literally the approach that we were thinking about, afterwards. One of our slogans was literally littering is hate against the environment, and that we can't hate if there's nowhere for any of us to live. That's literally what we were chanting all throughout, and that motivated people, rather than just throwing it on the ground, give me their trash.
Yeah, and a lot of even little things like that, it just gets lost in perspective. Compared to all the big things, like with the big events, I can understand that people they're just there to do their cause. They're really in the moment. They don't get that they're throwing trash and stuff like that or leaving things behind. Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, obviously that needs to get recognized. Of course, people are going to come in and do work. People that get paid to clean up the park and everything else, they're going to have so much extra work to do. Might as well help out a little bit.
Yeah, it devalues your message as well. I believe. Exactly. I feel
and that's what we were looking out for in the end. You just want to make sure that again, best example possible, because things like this could be counterproductive in a sense.
Want to lead an example. Want to be somewhat professional. Yeah. We want to really get our idea across in the best way possible, and to be role models in such a way that the ideas carry forward to what's going to happen next. Yeah. And the next generation, which I wanted to get to as well. And that's really important, because we're not trying to let this hate breed on anymore. We're not trying to let all this continue on. We're trying to get across the golden rule.
They can think the way they want to think, but there's really no place for any hateful actions to take part in the first place.
Treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat your environment the way that you want it to come out.
Yeah. And I feel like identity politics leads a lot into this hatred for one another. We don't look at each other as individuals. You look at each other as groups, by skin color, by political identity, even religion. I feel like we like what Martin Luther King said: judge person by their character, not by the color of their skin. I feel like we start treating each other as individuals and exchange ideas, then we could maybe make some more progress.
Exactly, because what it is when you start to group people like that, you start getting recognized as a group. So therefore, anyone in that group, their actions reflect on your cause and your how people view you.
Yeah.
And it's very important. And even for me, I really don't want to relate to any single group. I want to just stay as an individual. If anything, if I want to relate as a group, I want to relate as a human being.
Yes.
Because in the end of the day, that's really the group. It's humans.
Exactly. That's what we were. We were just people doing our part.
If you want to do a group, do it like that.
But unfortunately, in our education, in our schools, it's now a microaggression to say there's only one race, the human race, and I feel like that's causing a bigger divide, with racial tensions and all that. If we just look at each other as humans, then we can go forward more. We can see our humanity.
Why is there a race to begin with?
Just humans. No, you're right. We can go forward more, but it also, the fact that these problems still do exist with color, with race, religion, with whatever other things are, or organizations, these problems still manifest regardless of what the total view and progression is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, in time, it will eventually dissipate even further, but there's still going to be existence. So if we don't acknowledge the fact that, the Black Lives Matter, how they're trying to really promote, the fact that Black people are still being oppressed today, or women's rights, same thing, laws with abortion, or homosexuals, their rights for marriage,
and then handicap rights to receive the proper medical treatment nowadays.
Yeah, these little things, it's good that they are addressed, organizations just based on that. We should split it as a whole cause and really address all these issues together, be more organized just to defeat these issues rather than just separating each individual cause. Because say if one cause, someone, or at least that group, for instance, they're too extreme,
Mhm.
it's going to be completely against the cause, and it's just going to diminish everything that people have been working for, and we're just going to backtrack. That's not what we want.
I feel
and
like
you're right to,
go on. I'm sorry.
yeah, you're right to mention that. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like instead of protests and counter protests, we should be having town hall meetings and exchanging ideas and find a good middle path. But we obviously have to get rid of. We obviously have to get rid of hate groups like the KKK and extremist groups like Antifa and CARE. Like, they're obviously going to cause problems in those town halls because there is no middle ground with those types of people. It's their way or the highway, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we need to discredit people like that.
You're right. And I mean, when it comes down to it, at least with town hall meetings, I feel like our representatives should be doing that. In the office, the people that we speak our views to, as well as like for protests like that.
Yeah,
that's what
people have been asking for, like, meetings like that locally. Like, I've known like a couple of people have actually, like, to some extent, like, it's just, they just make themselves seem too busy.
Yeah, for protests, it's much easier for a bunch of people to be heard and for different groups to align together, but you're not going to hear one individual speak at a time. That's almost nearly impossible.
Yeah,
and especially something of that magnitude, and a town hall would be a much better setting for such a thing, but at the same time, you're not going to get everyone in there. So problem as well.
That's where the leaders of the groups that are protesting and counter-protesting, like the organizers of BLM and I'm trying to think of other people, and etc., should go talk to the representative and talk to other people, exchange ideas, exchange like emails, and talk privately, like kind of like how we're doing, but I'm going to be making it into a video. There's always room for discussion. I'm very
even in the protest, there was room for discussion.
Yeah, that's what I learned more than anything. Like, people, like I said before, there were moments where, like, once people kind of saw that, like, like, oh, they're with them,
but that only reached to an individual level.
That never got to a boiling point. So, like, near the very end, to where conflict would happen. People were just like, people within the crowd would just be, okay, let's calm down. And then as soon as everybody would be calm, one portion of the group would voice themselves, and then the other would voice themselves, and then it'd just be like, okay, let's just defuse and
and the individual ideas got across, but as a group, like the rest of the protesters, people on the other side of the city wouldn't have saw that.
It's the agitators that I believe that kind of
exactly. It was literally the agitators
ruin it.
Yeah, that ruined it for everyone. In Charlottesville, it was both the leaders that took over. I think his name was Jason Kessler. He was the organizer, I believe, and then you have the police leading them right into Antifa. So a brawl happens. So Antifa is an agitator. So you have these two agitators going on, and then you have this hysteria, this huge riot that kills one person, eventually kills two more in a helicopter crash. Mm-hmm. The deaths were preventable, obviously.
Yeah, 100%.
So in Boston, I would say it had to be the agitators inside some of those groups, like Antifa.
That is like Antifa, and even just individuals that were from different neighborhoods.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mentioned before, the specific group that kind of got everything set up in the end, they were there. They were trying to claim Black Lives Matter, but they were just really...
They were repping their hood.
Yeah, exactly. They were just taking out their anger for...
their police.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really what it boiled down to.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they were just making it clear, like, oh, they're killing us every day and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, I understand that.
But that's a few bad eggs out of the whole group.
Exactly.
And that goes... Again, the same idea as well as like with the whole group of humanity and all these different organizations, and you have Antifa.
Yeah.
It's just like the extremists, the bad eggs. Those few bad eggs are going to run from everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like all throughout the day, you had like probably 99.9% of everybody being calm, being peaceful, going about their days, doing any little thing they could do. complying with the police whenever things would get harsh or anything like that. But it's just then you had this one group that's like they were just spewing hate, which is all around.
I think you froze.
And chasing anybody that they. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you froze for like a good couple seconds. If you want to backtrack a little bit.
You can't answer hate with hate.
Yeah.
Well, to sum it up, you can't answer hate with hate.
Yeah.
Like, the golden rule does exist. You treat others the way you want to be treated. If you treat someone in a hateful way, then they're going to treat you the same exact way. And that's going to be the answer. If you want to kill somebody, they're going to want to kill you. And that's the type of thing that we need to realize as a society.
That person only wants to kill you because he wants to defend himself,
Mm-hmm.
Or wants to kill you based on color or religion or sexual orientation.
Yeah. It's kind of like the idea that after Richard Spencer was sucker punched on the streets of Washington, D.C. during the inauguration, this idea came up to punch a Nazi. So once they couldn't find any more Nazis, they started broadening the definition. Yeah. I'm pretty sure Sargon of Akkad, who's pretty left wing, he's more center of the road than he is left wing, but Sargon of Akkad has been called a Nazi. There have been plenty of people that are definitely not Nazis, like Ben Shapiro, who is a Orthodox Jew, was called a Nazi.
Yeah.
So, like, when you broaden the definition, it's kind of it is ignorant because when actual Nazis show up, like in Charlottesville, we start denying. It's like the little boy who cried wolf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do it enough times, and then no one's gonna want to listen.
Exactly. So like that.
Solutions to these things.